Hello, and
Hello,
welcome
everybody. How's everybody doing? Welcome to this week's episode of In Review.
to Show Us What You Got.
I want to see what you got. All of your base are now belong to us. Anyway, welcome everybody. Hello.
Hi, Raven.
we're adults, we swear.
I do not claim to be an adult whatsoever.
I'm the biggest 5-year-old I know. So, anywhoozle, happy Friday the 13th, everybody.
Friday the 13th. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's Friday the 13th, my man. We're it's Friday the 13th, babe. I'm normalizing guys calling other guys babe.
Babe.
What's up, babe?
Babe.
I
What
feel
did I
like,
call you earlier when you said that? I forget. Doesn't matter.
I don't know. I forget either. I forget too. I think you just called me babe too.
I can just call you babe.
Yeah.
Babe. So,
Bob.
continuing our 8 days of Halloween, considering that we're only doing reviews every Friday, and then just about 8 Fridays till Halloween. We continued our theme of the dark, the cosmic, the crazy, the ridiculous 90s special effects, and we did Event Horizon.
Yes, sir.
If you haven't seen it, it's probably because you were born after 2000. So
Yeah, this one was again. I went into something that I hadn't seen before, so I went in totally blind. I was pleasantly surprised.
you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I wasn't
did.
sure. I couldn't get a read off you at the end of it because it has its moments to be a little wonky.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the classic trope of like anything that came out in like the 90s, early 2000s had like there's some, you know, like I'm coming for you, motherfucker. And like, you know, the little things like when the guy gets blown away by an explosion, you see the wire that's yanking him. Little things like that I love because it shows, like, you know, I mean, nothing's perfect.
It was a mix of practical and CGI.
Yeah. And it was
and turn of the millennium
for
techno
97 for a 97 flick, dude. The special effects, I will say, were impressive. It's like the part where like the that guy the body from head to toe is on fire. And you could tell there are some parts where it's CGI, but then there's like parts where like he's walking through the water, but the flames are still there under the water, and I was like, that looks good. Like from a cinematic standpoint, it looked like, you know, the body was on fire and it was underwater. Like, I don't know if that was like if they achieved that with practical effects somehow. I don't think CGI was really.
They did the CGI for mostly the space stuff. I think they basically busted their budget, like creating the ship itself.
Yeah.
If you notice at the end of the film when everything explodes, that they're actually practical models.
Oh yeah.
Blowing up.
Yeah.
So So every other shot of the ship prior to that is CGI.
Yeah. I noticed that the way, because I mean I've seen so many behind the scenes things of you know, different movies where something gets blown up and all of a sudden did the stream end? Why does it say? No, it says we're still. It doesn't say go live, so it says
So
we're still.
YouTube's been doing that, where it actually, if you're sitting there with a live on, they will actually just drop you and put you onto another video.
Interesting. Can anybody else see us? Did anybody notice the video drop, or is anybody still watching us live? Like, what? Can anybody see or hear us? Yeah, because I got it up on.
Because did it do it to you too?
Yeah.
Did it to both of us?
Yeah. Interesting. Why would you do that? Because I have it back up on my phone.
So did I. I had to go back onto it. Hi, Raven. Thank you for rejoining.
But anywhoozle, you see us, you hear us. So, but yeah. So anyway, This I enjoyed it. I'm a huge fan of anything cosmic horror, and this pretty much hit every nail on the head that I wanted and more. It had, you know, some of that, like, it wasn't too gory, but there was some parts where, like, you know, there was a bit of gore, like when the one scene where the one guy's like flayed and like hanging from the ceiling.
Oh,
and
there's
stuff.
definitely gore.
Yeah.
It's just it doesn't focus on the gore. It's not.
Yeah,
It's not like
a lot of it's
it's
implied.
It's also in your face, but it's also there for like it's there. It's gone. It's there. It's
Yeah.
gone. It's there. It's gone.
Yeah.
So this movie, I for the longest time till I actually purchased it. Actually, I didn't purchase it. I got it as a gift. Got it as a birthday gift. Because a friend of mine also shares the same love for this movie as I do. Shout out to Kevin Hopkins. This movie shares a very similar plot with a movie called Sphere. Have you ever seen Sphere?
That's where like it's like a sphere of like liquid or something, and like I remember like people like trying to poke
gold.
at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one is Dustin Hoffman's the lead. I believe Samuel L. Jackson's in that. And it does the exact same thing where they go in, they discover it, it's this alien thing, and then all of a sudden it starts showing them their fears and all this stuff. And, I believe Queen Latifah's in it also. And she actually has like one of the most terrifying scenes that I ever saw as a kid.
Really? I didn't know she. I always thought she did like anything that Queen Latifah had been in as far as like films was always like comedy.
No, it was
like
one of her
family
one serious
films.
roles, and and actually she gets like trapped underwater. Yeah, and there's like these sea snakes and they're attacking her, and it's
Oof.
Sphere's fucked up. So Sphere's basically the same thing, but it happens in the water.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember seeing like a trailer for it when I was
Yeah.
younger. For it, I don't believe I've ever seen that film.
Both of them, I would actually go to say like in the overall, Sphere's probably a little bit of a better movie, a little bit better budget, but like I said to you when the movie was over with, like you have to take this movie in the context of it was from 1997.
Yeah.
And once you kind of do that, then you're like, oh, this is pre-Matrix.
Yeah, and like I said, it didn't disappoint. It was very there's parts where it's very realistic. Like Proxima Centauri is actually a binary star system that is the nearest star system to us. It's actually I think 4.2 light years from Earth, and or maybe not from Earth, but from our solar system. And I thought it was interesting that they added that.
Well, what's cool is that the writers of this movie, like how you said it was very realistic, that was one of their major focuses when they did this movie, because I watched the commentary, so I caught up on all this stuff and the little background things, that they wanted to take concepts that hadn't been done in space movies before, and like think about it and conceptualize it and then try and bring it to screen.
Yeah.
So like one of the things is like when Lawrence Fishburne's sitting there, he's like, have you ever seen Fire in Zero G? Like that was a thought directly from one of the writers.
Yeah.
And there's so much of that, like what actually happens when you get stuck in an airlock. They did it.
Yeah.
And they broke it down, and like the veins popped out of his skin,
Yeah.
and like his eyes started to burst, and like those are the things that when they went through that movie, that's what they wanted to do. Now, granted, there's the campy scene where the front windshield explodes, and the stunt double for Lawrence Fishburne's like a puppet on a string,
Yeah.
like trying to pull himself in, and he gets to the doorway and he pulls himself in through the doorway, and then he turns around, he's perfectly fine, and he reaches his hand out to save the girl.
Yeah. I noticed that. There's parts of that where it's like, okay, like you're struggling to not get sucked out of space, and then you're holding on to this half open doorway with like very little effort. You're just kind of like leaning over, like give me.
As soon as he got through, he was just kind of like stop. He's good.
Okay, thank God I made it. Give me your hand.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like the folding space theory, how they brought that up. So, I like that theory. I've seen it used many times, where like you're essentially creating a wormhole.
Yeah.
Through the fabric of space. And the way I've always I've always thought about that theory, and I try to wrap my head around it, is like, so say you have two planes, like this plane of existence, and you're trying to get from here to here, and then you fold them, and you just kind of like hop and jump, skip over, and you're there,
and then it unfolds.
Yeah, but then like,
there.
so like, say I have like a tablecloth,
Yeah.
right? And I have all these plates and cutlery and glasses and stuff, and I want to get from one end of the table to the other without like going across the table. And it's like, all right, I'll just fold the cloth. Well, what about all the other shit?
All the other shit.
Like all the other shit in space. Like that's my only thing. Like I try to wrap my head around that theory.
So that harkens back to what I said to you after that while we were eating pizza. Do you remember at the beginning of the movie where Dr. Weir says, "Oh, that everything that you're hearing about the ship blowing up and the core going critical and all that weird stuff," he's like, "None of that's true." But it is true, because that's what happens.
Yeah.
And so when you create a wormhole and you fold everything up, what happens when you unfold it? You create time, space distortions. Just like what happened with when the first time that they go into the thing. That's why it was randomly going off.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the ship is alive. No, it wasn't just that the ship's alive. It's these time dilations that are happening throughout their being on there.
Yeah.
And it destroyed Lewis and Clark. But then there's also the supernatural forces that eventually end up possessing Dr. Weir, which you realize he was being possessed from the start, because he was the first character who already started having the violent hallucinations and all that stuff. He's the first one you start seeing that, and he has the one where basically he wakes up out of cryostasis and is vomiting and freaking out, and everybody's like, calm down, calm down, calm down. And then at the end of the film, the same thing ends up happening to Clark? Yeah. Sparks. I forget her name.
Yeah, the name of the ship was the Lois and Clark.
Lois and Clark.
Yeah. The that the whole like you fold something in half and then you take it apart and you kind of have like a Rorschach type thing, and it's like, oh, you're imprinting something from this part of this time to that one, and that's causing like this time loop or type situation.
Did you ever see True Detective?
I've never watched True Detective.
So the reason I was about to say that is because Matthew McConaughey says time is a flat circle. And
life's a grave, man.
Dig it.
Dig it.
He was high school. Well, I'm not doing that one alive. So basically, time is the fourth dimension.
Yes.
Right. We've had that conversation. Time is the fourth dimension.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, and this is one of the things that I love when I hear people talking about these things, is they say, well, a 3D object appearing to a 2D person would appear as if something came into space, was a flat surface, passed through it, and then disappeared.
Yeah.
So we experience, and then they're like, we don't know what time is or how, or how it could ever be perceived. Well, actually,
God, I hope just having this conversation opens up a time warp and
oh yeah, it'd be awesome.
Oh my God.
So we are three-dimensional creatures,
mm-hmm.
and we experience time the same way a 2D dimensional creature would experience a 3D dimensional creature, which would be one-dimensional. So us being 3D creatures, we experience time in a single direction.
Yeah.
Unidirectionally. If you existed in the fourth dimension, then you would experience time in unidirection.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that we experience the three dimensions unidirectionally.
Yeah.
Not unidirectionally.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Like we experience 3 dimensions fully dimensional.
Yeah.
So watching a movie where we're talking about warping the dimensions of space and time, because that's what you would end up doing if you're trying to go from point A to point B by folding space-time and passing through it, we're witnessing it 3-dimensionally.
Yeah.
So I get where you're saying, like, there's all this other stuff,
Yeah.
but it's space-time. It's the 4th dimension. So you pass through all that stuff.
Yeah. I think this just
And
anchors the
and my wife bought more fish.
I think this just goes to show you that, like, you never, like, if you watched Event Horizon, you ever watched Back to the Future,
Yeah.
anything like that, don't mess with time.
Don't mess with time. One of the greater theories, and it's so much. it's all the subtly hinted at things that you kind of glaze over that throughout that actually answer those sort of greater questions of, like, well, how did that happen? And how did this happen? And how did this get there? And, like, the scene where what's her name, Mama Bear, she sees the kid in the generator room, so she chases him down, and she chases him down a hallway and then up the stairs and then through the hallway, and the kid's standing there. And you know, as a movie consumer, you're paying attention to the kid, and you're not thinking of anything else. But then there's a split-second flash of her death. She's already dead, and that's because time and space is already distorted. It's already happened.
Yeah. I didn't pick up that flash. There was a lot of stuff also happening during this film. I had both a dog and a toddler climbing on top of me at one point.
Yeah, I do apologize.
And then another point towards the end of the movie, like, pizza came, and I'm like, ooh, pizza. And then I missed, like, the last maybe, like, 30, 45 seconds of the movie. But
speaking of dog, you can see the dog behind you. And speaking of children, but proceed.
But yeah, that was actually one of the things I wanted to touch up on, was the part where she's chasing her son through the ship, and then she eventually, falls. And I was just like, other people are hallucinating. That this isn't real. You're in the clouds of Neptune, and your son is billions of kilometers away, but you're just like, oh, you're running, like, your kid doesn't even walk, like, and you're still like, oh, that's my kid, let me get him. Like, come on, that isn't real. Like, that part, like, kind of threw me out a bit.
Unfortunately, because like I said, that this movie's a good portion of it's lost of time. Unfortunately, there's, like, they're not going to do a director's cut. It's not from that era where they're going to go like, oh, you know what, it didn't test well, so we're gonna. No, they cut it down, and they lost all a lot of the stuff that sort of gave that background explanation.
Fair enough.
Of things. No, and I'm just saying. Like,
there was another thing where so the load bearing structures in space and everything being, like, very light and fragile, and, like, because when you're in space, you're not really building a ship to, you want something that's light and that can travel, very fast without utilizing too much fuel that would necessitate a lot of thrust. And so I like that, the ships, like, even when you watch it explode, it's like a paper mache thing. Yeah. Like it. I mean, granted, it's like it's a model, but yeah, like I like that they just kind of, like, that don't clamp that. That's not made for load bearing structure thing, and they just bend it with the clamp thing. He's like, it is now, but I like that they did that.
Well, and that also goes. So the crew, Lawrence Fishburne's crew, they were trying to get, like, they weren't trying to seem like they were spacefaring people. Like, they didn't want to give the same sort of feeling like Aliens, where, like, these are seasoned space travelers that have been, thousands of space light years back and forth and done all this stuff, because like it gives the breakdown. Like 2015 was the first time that they actually put a permanent structure in space, and they gave like the timeline. And this is 2047 that this is happening. Yeah, that's my progeny just sneaking around behind me, us in the cameras. Yeah, they can see you. They can totally see you. Yeah, you're busted.
No ice cream for a week.
No ice cream, you're grounded. No, I'm kidding. I would never. But you guys trying to be like all sneaky and stealthy, and you're just crawling around on the floor. They can see you. So. Yeah, I don't really want you on camera. I'm not having this conversation right now, bud. I'm live. Love you. Okay. So, these guys are supposed to be like, this is, out of how many missions, this is the first time that they've been actually out to Neptune, like, at serious distance. And Lawrence Fishburne even addresses that, like, the last time the USAC was this far into space, we lost both the ships, the Event Horizon being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, foreshadowing that this has happened before. And, what would space actually be like being that far away? But the point that I was trying to get at is the crew kind of addresses each other not like space, but like shipfaring, like seafaring.
Yeah, like aye, skipper, and like those like terminologies and stuff, and the what's it called? The terminology and how they're kind of like not piratey, but yeah, like seafaring type, and like when Dr. Weir's when that character comes up and he addresses the crew, and he's like, by the way, I want to start by saying, I appreciate everybody, taking their time, and he's like, and Lawrence Fishburne's character, Captain Miller, says, let me stop you right there, Doc. Look, we're all on our time off right now, and we're here because you need us, like, cut to the chase. Why are we here? What are we doing? Like, we're sure you appreciate it and everything, but cut the bullshit. Like, what's going on?
It, yeah.
And I liked the moment they bring up, like, we're going after the Event Horizon. They're like, oh, you mean that ship that was blown up? And
that's like saying, like, we're going after the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
Like, you mean that ghost ship?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going after that, and that's legitimately what it is. It's the Flying Dutchman in space.
Yeah.
The other part that they had airlocks, but they didn't have docking setups. If you remember, the reason the whole thing where he clamps down, because they didn't know how to get onto the ship.
Yeah.
That's a moment where, like, a sunken submarine. How do you get onto a sunken submarine?
Mm-hmm.
In 1945, they had absolutely no idea. They had to come up with, and basically they came up with, like, this thing that would attach. You would take another sub down, you would attach to it, and then you would have to blow the air out, make sure all the water is. I love you too. So that they could board it. But that's the scene in the movie where they're trying to figure out how to approach this thing, and Dr. Weir's like, all right, that's the airlock. That's the easiest place to get into it.
Yeah.
It's not like how modern space, or even further along in space evolution, they didn't have docking stations.
Mm-hmm.
They had to figure it out.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And I like that they added that, because it's not like, all right, let's dock it. Because, like, most space movies, it's just like, oh, there's the docking ring. All right, just back into it, and we'll connect and be on our merry way. Like, no, this is something that wasn't made for that. Another thing I wanted to bring up that was an interesting point was at one point when Dr. Weir, before he sees Mama Bear's body,
right?
When he first goes into that engine room, whatever you want to call it, with like the core. I noticed that they say that this dimension is kind of like hell, and it's just pure chaos and evil, and there's a lot of like kind of religious-y things that are hinted into it. Like I pointed out the part where when I don't want to say windshield, but like the where it blows out and it's kind of in the shape of a cross, and within that image there's like red lighting, and it almost looks like a face in that image. And then like when the guy's like flayed and hanging there, there's like writing in blood that kind of looks like glyphs or something, but like something you would like. There's kind of like a some religious-y type vibes in this, but there's one part that stood out to me where Dr. Weir's character, he's going up to the console that's right in front of the core, and when he approaches it, he almost looks like a priest at an altar, like about to give a sermon or something.
Yeah.
And I kind of picked up on a little thing like that.
Yeah, he's kind of the chosen one.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that at the end where he ascends with all the cuts, and he kind of takes on.
He got his eyes back.
Yes, but what are they called? What are they called in Hellraiser?
God, I haven't seen that
not
movie in a long
neophytes.
time. I think I saw that once, like forever ago.
What's up, Ada?
Peter, what's up, man? I swear
cool.
I missed
Every
90%
Friday
of your streams. Stop by, say hi when I can. I appreciate you, man.
We switched up the schedule, and now we do movie reviews on Fridays, so it's understandable. We're kind of sliding into this, getting used to it. So it's cool if people are still catching on to it.
Yeah, man.
So there is a lot of religious iconography, but they cut most of it out. And they also were doing things like specifically trying to avoid doing like the Geiger-esque alien stuff. And it's kind of hard not to, because when you think of like weird, metallurgic, weird sort of biomechanical stuff, you're going to run into Geiger no matter what. Geiger is basically the art inspiration for Aliens.
Okay. Yeah. I could see that. And anytime you do any kind of cosmic horror movie, it's almost like you got to have some kind of aliens in there.
So, yes, Event Horizon was a touch on 40K. But it's also it's basically one of the main inspirations to Dead Space. There's definitely a lot of because I've told you a little bit about 40K when they talk about like how they go through space.
Yeah.
How they travel through space.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the way that, like I said, they rip a hole through reality and they go through hell.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, that's That's badass, actually. High risk, high reward for space travel.
Peter, I appreciate you even more because that movie, and that's the thing that's really sad about it, is that movie had like a ridiculous budget of its time. I want to say it was in the double digits of the millions. I don't know off the top of my head, but it got panned in the box office. It's a cult classic.
Yeah.
I watched it. First time I ever watched it was on HBO, and then I don't
think I've ever, like I said, I've never seen it before. I remember seeing the name of the film, and like the poster for it here and there. Never really heard too much about it. It's a shame because I do consider myself kind of a movie buff.
I don't think people were ready for it. I mean, prior to this, like when you thought about space, you thought Star Wars. You thought Star Trek.
Yeah.
You didn't think space horror. When people thought of like space horror, they thought of like Jason in space.
Yeah.
And
like Alien.
Yeah, Alien. And I think that's one of the reasons why they made such a big push to stay away from Alien, which is sort of interesting because it sort of delves into that sort of body horror, alien-esque realm.
Yeah.
But it's also supposed to take place, I believe, like way before Aliens, because I believe Aliens happens I was actually just going over the timeline of Aliens the other day. I don't remember, but
Let's actually look it up real quick.
but throwing in demons and seeing a glimpse of hell too. Quality actors and actresses too. Well, yeah, and ironically, I believe at the time Sam Neill was like the only one who was the most recognizable star that was in it, and Lawrence Fishburne, of course, had some things under his belt, but he wasn't Morpheus yet. And
21-22.
21-22. That's what I thought. It happens at least 50 years after. So, side note: I will not be watching it again. It's such a good movie. I've watched it several times. But yeah, like Lawrence Fishburne and the guy who played DJ and a couple of the other guys. This actually sort of kicked off a couple of their careers where they became. I mean, the guy who played DJ. He was the one that got flayed.
Yeah, he was the medic. He was the EMS
Yes.
on staff.
Yes, he goes on to be. Telling you, dude, we gotta.
I know we got to get like a.
He goes on to do a little film with this guy from Australia.
We got to get a guy.
And
Jamie, pull up that video.
pull up that video, Jamie. And plays a person by the name of Colonel William. I think Tavistock is the character's name. Colonel William Tavistock in a little movie. It wasn't a big production. Tavington, Colonel William Tavington. It was just a little movie called The Patriot by Mel Gibson. You know, and that was
Small little
2000. So it was literally like one of his next films.
small little D-list movie called Avatar.
Avatar. He goes on to be the biggest, baddest British guy.
But yeah, the Matrix was like, because I think like Lawrence Fishburne was in he was in a couple movies. I think but that's the thing. Like
He was never a main character. He ends up being the hero in this. He ends up being the main character. This is one of those movies where the main character isn't the main character. He's actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
And it switches halfway through.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lawrence Fishburne, this was one of his first, and then he goes on to do Morpheus.
It just blows my mind that he plays Morpheus in The Matrix, Captain Miller in Event Horizon. What else? He been in? He always plays these like pretty badass characters, and then you look back and it's like, damn, he was Curly in Pee-wee's Playhouse. And it just blows my mind.
Cowboy Curly.
But
Cowboy Curtis.
Cowboy Curtis.
Cowboy Curtis.
That's it. What did I say? Curly?
Curly.
But yeah, Cowboy Curtis was a small indie film. Yeah,
listen.
It's got range.
Pee-wee opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Pee-wee's a good dude. Yeah. Stroke game on point. God rest his soul. I miss Pee-wee.
Oh my god.
Have you ever seen the original Pee-wee's Playhouse?
I don't think so.
It was a stand-up act. I love this.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes. Paul Rubens. Paul Rubens was a stand-up comedian who had an act that he would do where he played Pee-wee, and it was not child appropriate.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing something about that, like back when MTV first came. I think it was like 79 or 1980. I think it was when MTV first really aired.
Around there.
And they did a lot of it was music TV, but I remember they brought Pee-wee onto MTV, the MTV Music Awards, in the 80s. And he was up there telling jokes or something. I'm like, why is this guy on a kid show?
Yeah, man.
But but that makes sense. Early in his career, it was not kid appropriate.
And somehow segued it into a child's program that is beloved by our entire generation.
Yeah.
And 3 phenomenal films, 2 or 3, I can't remember. It was Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Pee-wee's Big Top Pee-wee. I don't remember. I
He
can't
used to
remember
be
them all
able to
offhand.
do
A spot on Pee Wee Herman.
Pee Wee Herman.
I stopped for obvious reasons. But so yeah, I mean, Lawrence Fishburne goes on to be Lawrence Fishburne, who he is now,
Yeah.
and some of the actually power pack films that he did.
Yeah, I've always that's another one of those actors where like if I see he's in a movie, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna check this out. Like there was I was scrolling through a bunch of like B-list movies earlier today actually, and I saw there was one. I got to go through them because there's a few that I wanted to watch with you for like we could do a review on them. But there's one that was like came out in maybe late 2000s, early 2010s, somewhere around that time frame. Forget the name of it, but it had all these actors that like I've never heard of before in my life. But then like Nicole Kidman was one of the actresses in there, and I was like, okay, we'll put this on the watch later list. This could be interesting.
I have not, unfortunately. Have either of you seen Master and Commander?
No.
No. I am a fan of Russell Crowe. I have seen snippets of it. I know that it's a phenomenal film. I'll definitely have to put that on my list. It's unusual, but I remember that when that came out, I was sort of like not into movies at that moment.
Russell Crowe's good too.
Yeah.
You know what I actually liked him in was what's that one with him and Ryan Gosling?
Russell Crowe, the regular guys? No, that's no. It's something like that. Though.
Yeah.
It's,
really good. I think they're both private investigators.
yes, and they're like competing, and then they realize that they're working on the same case.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a funny movie. I know it's I mean it's kind of meant to be funny, but there's like funny parts in it.
It came out at the same time of Return of the King, so it underperformed. It is an amazing though. What's that? Master and Commander came out around the same time as
The Nice
The
Guys.
Nice Guys. Thank you, Raven. Good save.
Raven's our Jamie.
Yes. Yeah. I wish he was here so we could.
Yeah. Pull that video up. That's actually maybe in the future.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Because she streams and she knows the setups and everything. But anywhoozle. But yeah, this movie I was pleasantly surprised. There's some movies where like I get to the ending and I'm just like, that's it. But like this one, I was just like, okay, this was good. And I like how you pick up on things that I don't pick up on, and then like we talk about it later, and I'm just like, oh shit, that makes so much sense. Like how it kind of how the beginning of the movie kind of piggybacks, or the end of the movie kind of piggybacks off of the beginning of it, where they kind of mirror each other.
And they don't make, and that's the thing is like they don't make a big deal of it, and that's that Unfortunately, sometimes that's the reason why a movie it sort of hits the thickness and doesn't make it all the way in.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people need it to be overly explained. Sometimes they need it on a billboard.
They need to be spoon-fed the details.
Yeah, they need somebody to go, so this is what's happening? And unfortunately, that's sometimes that can kill a film. I think this is. Are you okay? This is one of those films where that killed the film, where it's because a lot of people didn't pick up on all the nuances and hidden information that's through that movie.
Yeah, and I think gonna lurk. All right, Peter, we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man, appreciate it.
Yeah. What Peter said actually, the Master and Commander came out during Lord of the Rings. Like that happens a lot. Like when you have a big powerhouse movie that's like coming out, that you gotta like like for example, anything that came out, like how many movies can you name that came out the same weekend, let alone like the same month as Deadpool and Wolverine?
So I have an explanation about that. That's not even as bad as it is. Have you ever noticed that, like, a lot of times, is my internet not working? I'm trying to look up something here.
I mean, we're connected
and
Should be
talk at
working.
the same time. The Sphere, because I am almost okay. So Sphere came out in '98, and Event Horizon came out in
97.
97. Now I can't. Maybe I can get that over there. So that's. Hold on.
We're having a great time.
Okay, so this is the cover of Sphere, right? Line that up. Right. Okay. And this is the cover of Event Horizon. Rare.
Interesting.
Now, I'm not saying they ripped them off, because they didn't. 'Cause they're two very different films. But what I will say is that back in the day, way back in the 90s,
The good old days.
we were talking about this with Jamie Kennedy and John Lovitz, the way that the background of the industry changed. So we're writers, right?
Yeah.
And
We've written things.
yes. So we write a script. We write a screenplay, right? And we're proud of it. So we take it to Warner Brothers. And we say, we want $15 million to produce this movie. And Warner Brothers goes, go shit in your hat. So you go, okay, I'm going to Disney.
Mm.
And you go to Disney. You say, listen, we went to Warner Brothers. They told us to go shit in our hat. Here's a movie. Here's your opportunity. And Disney looks at your movie, tells you to go shit in your hat. Then about 6 months later, they come out with a movie that's literally based off your screenplay.
Yeah.
And they both come out with competing movies that look the same.
They're very similar.
Ignore me. That's kind of fun.
I'm telling you, man, it gave me too much power with this.
So, but legitimately, this goes on, and that's why you would get movies that would come out like 2, 3, 4 that have similar names, similar plot structure, similar characters, similar names.
See, that's messed up.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that's the way that the industry used to operate.
See, that makes me not even like, if I were to write something like a script, I wouldn't even want to bring it to any production company, Warner or Paramount or
Yeah, but they got the
whatever.
money.
Like,
They got the bankroll.
yeah, but like, because then they could be like,
We're talking.
oh, we don't want it, but we're gonna take your idea.
So we're talking about a time period that was before IFC films, because they didn't get really popular until like early 2000s. Like, we're not talking about, like, there was the Cannes and there was the Sundance Film Festival, but they didn't really have, like, I mean, Sundance did, Cannes did, but there was like this is the time period before like the major film festivals where you would go and pitch an idea, and like an independent guy is going to go, you know what, I got the money, let's risk it.
Yeah.
And so, like, trying to get all of the backing. I mean, dude, look how much a camera costs.
Oh yeah.
Like just a decent cinematographer cinematography level camera. You're talking about $125,000.
Yeah, you're talking about a house.
You're talking about a house. So if
Small house, but a house.
If you're shooting a movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need more than one, respectively, at least.
Yeah.
So just basing it off of that stuff. Now, you're not talking about dollies. You're not talking about mics. You're not talking about boom mics. You're not talking about lighting. You're not talking about stage work. You're not talking about anything else. The camera to actually pick up the imagery is a minimum of $125,000.
Yeah.
$125,000.
Say that one more time.
Thousand. You gotta turn it down a little bit. Just a little bit. It's a little too loud. That's better. So, and that's not editing. That's not mixing. That's not sound design. That's not anything else. That's just the fucking cameras.
Yeah.
And that's why you wonder, like, and I always love, like, when you see a movie and it's like a high flying action film, and like they're like, we broke 3 cameras. It's like, you mean you crashed like 3 Ferraris? Oh my god.
Yeah, really. So that's the thing. I feel like, look at movies in, like, a lot of people say the 50s were like the golden era of film. Which,
yeah, because it was still sort of the Wild West. Anybody could pick up and actually and anybody could pick it up and be a pathfinder and be like a what the hell's the name of that? A pioneer.
Yeah.
Of the industry. Now they're few and far between.
See, to me, I think the 80s was like the last really good decade of like original, really well written, well done movies.
No, I disagree. I don't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah.
I disagree.
No, please.
Because I'll say that the 90s
90s, well, yeah,
was good.
I would say like late 80s, early 90s was like when movies like were still good, and then after that, like early 2000s is when they kind of stopped being as good.
I would say 2010s. 2010s, from 2010 to like 2015 is when everything started to become like pastiche and cliche, and
Yeah.
starting to become like trope upon trope upon trope upon trope. But like 90s, so okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about it for real. And maybe we're gonna get kicked off YouTube here for a second.
I'm ready.
70s was really groundbreaking because that's when they started to realize that film didn't have to be basic. They could do effects, like really good effects.
Yeah.
They could actually put a large portion of the film, a large portion of the film's budget towards effects, and people would eat it up, and it's going to pay. 80s, everybody was ripping rails of coke. So they were green lighting everything. If you really go over with a fine-tooth comb of like what was coming out in the 80s, yes, there were some phenomenal films. There was also an absolutely massive Walmart bargain bin of shit that came out during the 80s too. Some of them great. Some B-list movies in the 80s were great. Conan the Barbarian. Most of those that built those guys' careers. Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, if they weren't just green lighting everything in the 80s, Terminator 2 would have never happened.
Yeah.
Like, and Terminator 2 was like the jumping point of CGI from the 90s.
Yeah.
Every time that
Shout out
there's
to ILM.
Yeah. Every time that there's something like that, like one of those movies, it would push the entire industry forward.
Mm-hmm.
The last time that something like that's happened was Lord of the Rings. After that, you can talk about T2. T2 pushed cinematography to be into every film.
Mm-hmm.
CGI was thus into every film. Prior to that, not so much.
Yeah. I feel like 70s was when like cuz like I feel like horror movies actually horror and sci-fi really pushed cinema to what it is today, cuz like before that a lot of it was just like a lot of actors just standing around and talking, where the things like Psycho, where with like the Norman Bates, like the one scene where it's like it's poured chocolate syrup down this shower drain,
Yeah.
and that was like the extent of like special effects or or like doing
Well,
like
that's 'cause
blood or anything back then. And then like in the 70s, it's like, oh wait, we can make these like fake bodies with fake blood and do all and make these scenes look real. And then Star Wars, like like, oh, we're in space and we have these special effects. Like they, like I said, ILM pioneered a lot of things from the 70s to the 90s. Like Pixar. Pixar was named after a machine that George Lucas helped create. For that they used for like it was called a Pixar. The machine itself was called the Pixar, and then like Pixar Studios grabbed up the Pixar machine and helped their computer and used that for a lot of their special effects as well.
The next major one, I mean, you had after T2, you had like Jurassic Park.
That was a big one where
one of the first times that the entire screen and everything on it was CGI. The backgrounds, the sky, the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the first movies they really did that. And actually Phil Tippett, I think, was the
That's
one.
A name.
He
No. That's a
I thought you were
that's
saying
a
like
famous name right there.
Yeah, he was he was the guy who pretty much made a lot of like the stop motion stuff for films, where in Jurassic Park when they showed we're going to completely computer generate a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and Phil Tippett's like, that's bogus, dude. No way, it's not gonna work. And then they show the test footage of it, and he's like, shit, I'm out of a job. And he's like, this actually looks good. So, but to keep him on, because he was such a huge mover with like stop motion stuff, and what they did was they had essentially like a metal skeleton frame of a T-Rex, and they used the stop motion that Phil Tippett would make, and then they digitally put the dinosaur on top of that, and that's how they made the T-Rex, specifically that chasing scene when they're chasing that like Jeep Wrangler. that was like a big change in what's it called?
The industry.
Computer graphics. Well, the industry, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, is specifically like the industry, or the big industry movers. So like the next one after like Jurassic Park would be like The Matrix.
Yeah,
that completely shifted the industry.
That was like how many, like, because they took all those cameras and they just
now they do the exact same thing. I forget how. I was just watching a thing on that. They're like, back in 1999, we did it with 1,000 cameras in a spiral. Now they literally just take like, I forget how they did it, but it's like one camera. It's on a thing, and it does the same thing where it could do the zoom in, the zoom out, and the 3D. But on top of that, it's because of that. Well, we're getting too ahead of ourselves, but so
us never.
Eventually, that technology is what turned. What's we call it? What's the one that they did with the Mandalorian? What's the name of that thing?
Oh, the volume.
The volume. So basically, the way that they created that rotoscope, basically, like the super advanced rotoscope, into an all-around background was the same thing, except instead of taking the cameras in, they turned them out so that they could scoop the
It's like having a green screen, but instead of just working on a green screen set, everything's just there. Like the first episode of Mandalorian, the room that he goes in to meet with the remnants of the Empire, that guy where they, and the doctor comes in with the he has the Camino cloning facility outfit on with the big glasses, and he gives him like, oh, I want you to find this, the asset or whatever they call it for us, and they're 50 years old, that's all it can give you, but he shows them the best. That whole scene was in the volume.
Right.
I thought they had like the table, the chairs, and parts of the set around, but like everything else, it was just like, that's all screens, and it blew my mind. And I love that they have this. It's like green screen, but everything is already there, and no matter which way the camera's facing, the camera alters the background. And a lot of actors were saying they'd get like dizzy because they're standing there, but the world around them is turning,
shifting
as the camera shifts angles and stuff too. But I love that they do that. But Bill Burr, who did phenomenal on that show, he was saying like he used to make fun of Star Wars in his bits.
Oh yeah, I watched that clip. I saw that clip
and then he was like, after I was on that show, he's like, I take back everything I said. Like it's really awesome what they do.
So the next one after The Matrix, a big like industry shift would be Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And there are ones along the way that sort of pushed those boundaries and shifted those things around. But what Lord of the Rings did to the entertainment industry as a whole cannot be understated. And because of, what's his name? Golem.
Andy Serkis. Who was, I literally almost went to, it was 2016, 2017, I think, when I literally almost went to Full Sail University just to learn motion capture stuff and learn the trick of that trade.
That I didn't realize that Andy Serkis helped the motion capture, but he literally was like, I don't want to use the word inception, but he was the point where like that's where that grew out of.
Yeah.
And like movies like District 9 wouldn't exist. Movies like Cappy, they're two of my favorite movies.
His portrayal in as Gollum or Smeagol in The Lord of the Rings, as well as Benedict Cumberbatch as Smaug.
Yeah.
That was great. Andy Serkis, his performance as Supreme Leader Snoke in Episode 8 of Star Wars was actually so good that they released the same scene that he did in the throne room minus the CGI.
Yeah.
Like it was him in the motion capture suit.
So just the development of that technology didn't just improve the movie industry. It also improved video games.
Mm-hmm.
It also improved a ton of different stuff.
I love watching like The Last of Us, like the behind this, like the making of, where like, they're in the game they're closing a door, but really it's just PVC piping, and like things like that, and it's phenomenal. I love watching those behind the scenes things where it shows like the game. One of the first games that actually really started using motion capture was The Force Unleashed. They used Sam Witwer's likeness as well as his voice. He voiced the character, but they put the dots on his face and did the motion capture for it, as well as him like holding the lightsaber and all those movements. That was another, like, I think that was one of the first games that ever used that technology too.
But now I think we're at a situation where it's going to be whatever is going to actually shift the industry again is going to, like, it's sort of interesting that I have lived
It's going to be us.
Yeah, right. I wish.
Wishes do come true.
I have lived through so much innovation, and of course, I'm sure everybody at every level sort of like, what possibly could we innovate next? Yes and no. When it was like the sort of the inception of CGI, it's like we can keep improving on this, and this can keep getting better. So there is a future, and I see the future of it is just eventually getting to the point of where we're at now. So now we're in a situation where it's like, how do we what I look at so many industries and I'm like, where do you innovate? How could you possibly innovate this further? What could you possibly do? Because like we're at that point. You know how how I know we're at that point? Because they're trying 3D movies. They're trying 4D movies. They're trying to incorporate other senses into a movie, like doing 3D films, or not 3D films, virtual reality films. None of them work. Nobody wants to do that. They all make everybody sick. The 4D things are fun for like one movie because you're sitting there in your chair and everything's shaking, everything's going all over the place.
You can literally watch, I'll call it a corn video with a VR headset.
Yeah.
Like you can, they have that. That's not
right.
like.
So what possibly could be what is the direction? Have we hit the ceiling? Where is the possible area
we
to
haven't
innovate?
because if you look at I remember playing Final Fantasy VII with my friends and be like, these graphics look amazing. How can they get any better than this?
Yeah, I disagree.
I'm because like that at the point of at that point in time, you don't have anything better than that. Like look at Unreal Engine right now.
Well, that yes. That's what I'm saying is that when you're at that crux of when you're in that crossroads and you're like, wow, how could this get any better? Most of the time, you're like, it's impossible. There's no way to improve this and any better. But when it comes to like graphics, I watched a very interesting thing on graphics. So originally, there was 8-bit technology, 16-bit technology, 64-bit technology. Then that's when they cut the bits out and they stopped counting bits. And they just got into Xbox and PlayStation, and Nintendo is just Nintendo.
How many polygons does this have? How's the shader complexity and this? Yeah.
So I watched a very interesting thing when they were talking about polygon count. Bless you. And they said that polygons are a diminishing return, and you get to a certain point, everything's going to be so smooth that you're not even going to be able to notice. You're jumping. I think we were talking about like 4th gen. Graphics cards up until like 5th or 6th gen graphic cards, and we're like 10th gen now.
Yeah.
So when y'all can count my teraflops, you got it, Alan.
Alan, what's up, babe?
So that's actually a very good point, because what they did was they stopped doing polygon count and they got into computing size, teraflops. That's where we're at now is counting the amount of computing processes to measure the cards against each other.
Say that. That was really sexy.
So
I fucking love him. We need to get him on the show one of these days.
But that's what I'm saying. Like now, even with like CGI, you look at Unreal stuff. Like some of the stuff that you've seen where people did the mods to
Cyberpunk,
where the hyper photorealistic.
The lighting looks amazing.
When you're getting into that level of like rendering, where do you go?
Yeah.
Where is it to go? Like the next step is, like I said, is incorporating some level of like smell. Scent, it's sight and sound. We've hit the max.
I've heard of so many things like people making jokes in movies like, wait till they invent smell-o-vision. Like you're watching the Cooking Network and the guy's like fanning the food towards the camera. It's like, if they invent smell-o-vision, you can smell that. Like, first of all, Guy Fieri, shut the fuck up. Second of all, they don't have a smell microphone.
Here's the thing.
I think that's going to be a silly thing.
There is one sense that will elicit a visceral response 100% of the time.
Who's this? Salonius Algar. Bro, between the Force Unleashed and the animation they did for the Knights of the Old Republic is what peak of Star Wars. Agreed. Force Unleashed, I could replay that game over and over and over. Same with Knights of the Old Republic. I still play Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMO, to this day.
I'm just going to put out that Salonius Algar sounds a lot like Marnius Calgar. Just putting it out there.
I mean, probably.
And if it is a reference for the Emperor.
Is that a 40K thing? Or?
He's the chapter master of the Ultramarines, Marnius Calgar.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's
he's the 40K guy. If it's Star Wars,
it's not my legion, but I respect
it's your boy,
as we are brothers.
But yeah, they
for the lion,
for the
nerd herd.
Oh, Tommy, what's up, babe? Yeah, the Force Unleashed really pioneered, I think, for games. Motion capture. They really hit the nail on the head with that one.
So to segue into the other part of this, I downloaded a little game.
Did.
It's. I mean, maybe somebody's heard of it. It's just a little. It's just this little something they threw together. Called Space Marine 2.
Yeah.
Which I have to say is legitimately one of the redeeming video games I've played in the past 3 years.
So I texted you and I was like, yo, Tim's playing this in my Discord right now. He's streaming it. Looks gorgeous.
Yes.
Looks phenomenal.
Yes.
Definitely something I might pick up soon. But I will say I've never seen Tim rage quit in a game before.
Oh yeah, it's tough.
He was like, he's like, I keep losing 90% of my matches. He's like, I don't know, and I think it's mainly because it's such a new game, the multiplayer. They haven't really balanced the skill sets yet.
I do believe that that is the next patch that they're doing, is basically balance out. So essentially, the Space Marine 1 didn't have a multiplayer, and so your character is weighted for PvE.
Mm-hmm.
So you hit hard and harder than if you were supposed to be shooting a player.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, is that, Titus is an elite force. He's the main character, Demetrius Titus. And he's supposed to be able to do what he does in the video game. And so when you're spoilers, if anybody wants to play Space Marine 2, you start smoking Rubric Marines, which are Chaos Marines, and you definitely put them down faster than they put you down. So now, granted, it's what I like about it. Everybody's like, it's like Gears of War, except it's not. It's not at all. You don't hide. There's no hiding.
Yeah.
There's no sticking behind a rock.
I like that.
You get almost the same level of punishment of being like stuck out if you wander out into an open field.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be ready. This is actually a better blend of what this game actually is Ninja Gaiden combined with Halo.
Okay.
Because you have to tie in melee combinations, parry stalls, and shooting all in one. So you're getting swarmed by these creatures, and you have to catch one that's diving at you. You got to stop and block another one that's about to swing down on you. And you also got to be able to pull out your pistol and shoot somebody.
Yeah.
So, granted, it's not as in depth as some of the combinations that you would have in, say, like Ninja Gaiden, because If you just go straight melee, you're going to get your ass handed to you.
Yeah.
If you just stand there and shoot, you're going to get your ass handed to you.
So
it is a welcomed balance of both.
It's funny you say that because I was actually just playing a game last night called New World.
I've heard of New
I
World.
played it when it first came out. I was very excited for it, and I played the absolute hell out of it the first like few months. And then I was like, I kind of stepped away from it for a bit just because like I was lagging a lot. It was mainly because like I was streaming it a lot, and when my computer can, like, I can run Star Citizen at 60 frames with maxed out graphics. It's not an issue. But then if I try to stream it, it gets like laggy.
Yeah.
Same with a lot of like Call of Duty does that, and New World does it. Streaming it is a little. I got to put the graphics on like medium.
You told me that I should probably stream it, and I would actually enjoy streaming it, except for the fact that I have everything maxed out, plays beautiful, 60 frames a second, but the loading of the resources literally takes like 15 minutes per between. Now, what I got to say is when you're on a mission, seamless. Absolutely seamless from start to finish.
Well, that's
it's
how
the
like
loading
Star
screens in
Citizen is,
between.
yeah. That's how Star Citizen is. Star Citizen is very like,
Yeah,
it takes a bit to load in, but it's so because there's no loading screens.
Ninja Gaiden is one of my all-time favorite games. Can't say that I'm a master of it. I am not. I enjoy it. I get to about midway through it, and then it just starts handing me my ass on a silver platter, and then I'm like, yeah, I can't do this. I'm even on easy.
I never
it just
played Ninja
whoops the
Gaiden.
shit out of me.
Actually, no, it's a lie. I think I played a Ninja Gaiden game on PlayStation 2 years ago. But New World is a really good.
Alan,
run a render.
do you need help? Are you okay? It's okay.
I love them. The New World. So it kind of takes place. So you have people traveling from, Europe and other places of Europe to the Americas, like because they keep hearing about this new world. But on the way, in the middle of the Atlantic, there's this mysterious island that appears, and it has this thing where like resources are infinite, and like you chop down a tree, it grows right back, and which kind of lends to the trope of like when you're running a mission and it's like, oh man, that guy just like got that thing that I need from a mission. Don't worry, it'll respawn in a couple. It kind of like plays off that trope where like it's this new world where resources are infinite, and these three factions kind of come about that are warring over control of this, and you literally, like, whatever faction you join, there's war in different settlements.
Somebody I was just watching was actually talking about New World, and they were saying that was one of the biggest problems when it first released, was its balance system was really off.
Yeah. Now I was playing it last night, so you can only have up to 3 characters in the game. It's not like you go to another server and then you can make another 3. Like, it's just you're 3, you make 3 and then you're done. And
ignore me.
Ignore me. So the first character I made, it's very like 1700s technology. Like, it's cannons, swords, muskets, etc. And you have like you have your light armor, medium armor, and heavy. So you have like cloth, leather, metal. So I decided, I'm going to make my usual go-to is like medium armor, and I have like a bow and a hatchet. And I kind of made my guy like, I mean, it's the Native American in me. So I made like this Native American build where it's like he's got a hatchet, bow and arrow, and he just runs around and, snipe people with an arrow. And then I made this one guy who's just like heavy armor and musket and a blunderbuss. And I'm just going to run and gun, and I'm going to have heavy armor and take everything. And I come across these people I got to fight, and one has a sword, or no, he has a shield and a spear, and they charge, and even every time I'm like hitting them, it's like they keep blocking my bullets, and they keep lunging at me, and they're hitting me, and I'm like, and one of them damn near almost killed me once, and I had to like heal myself and like get my health back up after I defeated him. And one of them dropped a greatsword. And I was like, all right, I gotta switch up my tactics because like at one point I had to fight 2, 3, 4 of them, and I was just like, this is. And so I had my blunderbuss up for like a short range bursts, and then so I'm fighting this one guy. He has like a rapier sword, and he's like fencing at me, and I'm just like hitting him with the blunderbuss, and I'm like dodging and rolling and moving. And when the person with the sword, the shield and the spear would come up, that's when I'd switch to the greatsword. Now I'm like able to like parry and block with them, and just have this huge fuck off giant sword that's like the size of a car. And I like can, that's when I realized I'm like I can't just run and gun. I can't have just guns, because then if I come across that character, I'm gonna get ganked. And if I have just a sword, I'm not like, I need that happy medium.
So that's one of the interesting things about talking about weaponry. One of the interesting things about
I need currency.
Space Marine 2 is that it sneakily works in a weapon system that if you know the game, then you know like what's good against certain armors, what's better against other armors, what's good against, like if you're just going up against fodder, bolt gun, one shot kill everything, but if you're going up against like say another Marine, then you want the plasma incinerator. You want to bust out the plasma incinerator. Now, granted, you don't know what you're going up against because you're walking into a live battlefield.
I just love the way you say things sometimes, like plasma incinerator. I got a little excited.
Plasma
I'm not gonna
incinerator.
Stop! Not live.
So
say it one more time.
Plasma incinerator for the Emperor.
Thank you.
So
I love it.
The only thing that actually was giving me a hard time, I played it on normal. The only thing that was giving me a hard time was the first time I ran into a dude. It's a phenomenal game.
He's downloading it now. Nice.
What the hell is it called? It's a Hellbrute, but it's a Dreadnought. So the first time I went up against a Chaos Dreadnought, it thumped me pretty good. Couldn't get out of the way because they're made to basically like have you ever seen what a Dreadnought looks like?
Mm-hmm.
So think a tank with 2 legs.
Okay.
And they have so a Hellbrute. Some of them have like big hammer fists, and they have a plasma. So they have a hammer fist on the left hand side and a plasma gun on the other. And the way that they attack is they flail.
Okay.
So they slam and they turn and they fucking drop back down onto you because they're basically their hips are like on an axle.
Okay.
So you don't have to dodge once. You got to dodge like 5 fucking times till it gets tired. And this thing has an engine. Engines don't get tired. So this thing, I'm like roll, boom, 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 roll, boom, 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 boom. That was the only thing when I kind of realized like back off a little bit, let the other guys, pull him off of me, then switch to grenades. And my favorite gun against them is I'm giving you hints there, bud, Alan. When you find the bolter that has the grenade launcher attached, pick it up. You basically beat the game. You're going to need other weapons for other certain situations, but that damn thing, you're walking around with eight grenades.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with the whatchamacallit, the Hellbrute, pump 3 grenades into him, he's going to immediately turn on you, run for the ammo, pick up the other ones, and then just make your way around the thing, do it again, boom, 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 boom. And they have like 5 tiers of health, and just 5 grenades knocks them down about 1.5. So it thumps them pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was doing last night. I was like, because I was getting swarmed by like 3-4 opponents at a time, because I'd be like dodging and rolling, trying to like dodge these moves, and then now I'm aggroing another like NPC that's walking by that has like the tower shield and the spear that's about to fucking Leonidas the shit out of me. And so yeah, it's a lot of it. A lot of it's being quick on your feet and knowing when to hit, knowing when to hold up.
So then after you beat the game, there's only about, they say like, oh, there's only 6 missions. Yeah, there's 6 missions that are anywhere between 2 to 3 hours each.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, that totals out to 18 hours total for a game. But what I will say is there's operations and there's multiplayer. Operations make me feel like Destiny. So I kitted out my guy. I built my Dark Angel. I got the green. I got the sword in the wings, and I got the sword on the other shoulder. And yeah, I'm happy about that. I didn't unlock anything else yet because I just unlocked operations now. But it's literally like playing Destiny, where they tell you, okay, you got to go take care of this. And you go in, and it's, instead of fighting like all fodder and 1 elite, now you're fighting 3 elite and 3 elite and 3 elite and 3 elite. And you got to manage that around. And these guys have swords, or these guys got like sniper rifles, and you're trying to hit this thing that's like this fucking big up on the screen. And sniper rifles are okay. Pretty much a 2-hit kill on anything that's bigger than fodder. But you've got like a total of like 12 rounds. And you're going
So not too far off from like the sniper rifles in Halo. Like,
yeah.
2 body shots is a kill. Like 1 headshot's a kill.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh,
this is like 2 headshots?
Oh yeah, 2 headshots.
Oh.
If you ain't laying them on the head, you ain't killing it, dude. You hit them in the body, they're gonna eat it. These things suck.
Ugh.
These things, they suck. And for a reason, though. If you play the game, like, that's the way it's balanced. Is that, like, they call them HQs. HQs are basically the leader of a squad. And so, like, typically with the Tyranids, which is the main bad guys in the game, you're dealing with, like, anywhere between 5 to about 10 of these guys. So you got to think, that's 10 rounds. You got to put 10 rounds into them.
Yeah.
That's 1 squad. And then there's 1 HQ. I actually forget what they call them. What the ones that you're dealing with are typically Neurogaunts or Gaunts. Gaunts are just like they're like raptors. They're like raptors that have like samurai swords for hands.
Lovely.
And they even run like raptors. Like they run like this, and then like they'll stop if they can't see you. They'll like poke their head up, and they fucking and they're nasty. They're fast, and they dive at you and shit.
So do you think you're gonna actually record some footage?
There's a possibility
because I want to, because I think we got to do an honest review of this.
Ford Raptors with ninja swords, yes. Actually, they're more like they're sergeants. They're HQs. They're pretty heavy, and I don't want to give it away. See, that's the thing. I don't want to give too much of it away because they bust out a couple like in the know enemies, like some really cool ways. You fight a Carnifex in the first 10 minutes of the game. Carnifexes, the ones I was telling you about, are like, they're called Screamer Killers. They're fucking huge.
Oh, yeah, you told me about them.
A Screamer Killer is actually a more elite version of a Carnifex. They don't have them in this game. Wouldn't doubt that they're going to whip them out at some other point. They're already hinting at a full... do I give it away?
I mean, we already gave away
a
video. We already gave away a review of a movie that, I mean, granted, the movie came out like what, almost 20 years ago. But if you don't want spoilers for Space Marines, cover your ears. Go make yourself a cup of coffee right now.
Or if you want a spoiler that you're not, unless you know the greater lore, you're not going to pick up on, then stick around. So, one of my favorite scenes out of the whole thing, it's started to make its way on the internet, is actually when Marneus Calgar shows up. Because It's a scene that is reminiscent of classic Warhammer, where they're all piled up on the hill, and the one guy has the flag, and he's like plucking away with a pistol, and it's the last stand scene that happens in the game. Amazing. I could tell you about it. You're not going to know it until you feel it, and it's like, yes, yes.
I'm telling you, we got to get some footage of you playing, and we'll do a Space Marines 2 review.
So, throughout the game, you are, and here it is. This is going to be this is the interesting spoiler. So in the roadmap to their release over the season pass, they hinted that there's going to be a new enemy. And everybody's like, a whole new faction? Because when you talk about new enemy in Warhammer, there's so many enemies that everybody was like that. And then they came out and like, no, it's not going to be a new faction. Well, now playing the game, they lied. And what you realize is there are, so you in the game, you fight the Tyranids and you fight the Thousand Sons. And the Thousand Sons are a traitor marine group. They're called Rubric Marines. They have very like sort of Egypt-based stuff. They have like the Pharaoh crowns and things like that. And
that sounds kind of cool.
Yes, and so they are worshippers of a god by the name of Tzeentch. And Tzeentch is the Lord of Change and Madness. So, yes. And so you're dealing with like demons and all sorts of craziness. But in the first game, you go up against Chaos, and it's Chaos Undivided, which is a little different. They're a different faction. They are straight traitors. They just turn their back on the Imperium as a whole. And they were followers of Horus. I'm getting way too deep into this. And the current leader is Abaddon, the Despoiler.
I love when you do, though.
But so now you're actually fighting a singular faction who are the followers of Tzeentch. And Tzeentch, his main guy at the time was this guy Imra. And he channels energy from an artifact from the first game into the new game. But there are these structures that they're using, and these structures have a very interesting look to them, right? And the Mechanicus, they're like they're an ally faction of the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines are your main character in this game, and the Mechanicus worship technology, and they, in the early days of 40K. AI got loose and created its own monstrous robots. And it's what they call the Dark Age of technology. And so when they defeated the robots or the Men of Metal, I believe is what they were called, the Emperor said, no more technology. It stays right where we're at. We're not changing it. We're not screwing with it any further than this. It's too dangerous. We're not doing that. So the Mechanicus, they were built to try and figure out different things from previous generations before that so that they could basically replicate them. And that's where like the armor comes from. That's where the tanks come from. I
feel like that's what we should have done.
Oh, dude, if you
should have stopped at flip phones.
If you get into the lore of 40K and where we exist right now, there's so many times where I just like shake my head and it's like the Emperor's right. So the Mechanicus, they find, and this is the funny thing, so that they have this inexorable drive to try and find as much technology as they can so they can recreate it. And sometimes, the warp is sort of everywhere. Warp is their version of hell. And so like if you allow your drive to get too out of hand, the warp can take that and twist your desires and all that stuff. So that's what happens. And he thinks he's doing good. He thinks that he's benefiting the Imperium by, eventually trying to close the warp. And instead, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh shit. Oh shit. So it's this thing, right? And it looks like a TV remote. It looks like a long TV remote, but it has very distinct, like in Halo. You know when you play Halo, and there's Halo sort of talks about the predecessors.
Forerunners?
The Forerunners.
Yeah.
They talk about the people who created the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There is a race in this game that has that. They're called the Necrons. And the thing about the Necrons is they were a predating race. And they got started on a planet that basically caused them cancer constantly. They were always perpetually dying. So they created these things that, remember we were watching Astartes, and there was that thing that it looked like a statue that was like being built. I told you about the Catan.
We were watching what?
Astartes, the video of...
Yeah.
And there's the big gold statue that they walk past.
Yeah.
And it's the husk, I told you, and that's where the Catan, they embody the husk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was the Necrons who created that.
Okay.
So they're like the forerunners in this. And so what ended up happening was they got the Catan to they made a wish. They made a Faustian bargain where it was like, we don't want to have cancer all the time. We don't want to be perpetually dying. Is there anything that you can do? And the Catan are like, yeah, think genies. They were like, gotcha, turned you into metal. And so they have like...
Damn.
And what ended up happening was, because they turned their skeletons into metal and they put motors in their organs, and they basically began to forget who they were. And then there was basically one of their emperors, like, he put the entire race to sleep because they were already like, they weren't themselves. He wanted to save their souls, and he wanted to correct things. So they were starting to basically expand throughout the universe, and they became like cockroaches. Like, they were bad, like zombies.
Wow.
So he put them all to sleep. But that means that they were already existing throughout the entire realm of 40K. So they can, like, if you trigger something, they'll come up out of the ground and just start attacking because they think that you're imposing on their planet. Because they reverted back to just like animal drive.
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes you'll run into Necrons and they will try and work with the Imperium, but they have to sort of remember themselves because they're trying to get their people to be themselves again. And sometimes they work with the Imperium. Sometimes they're just...
I think I was watching an interview with Henry Cavill when he was like talking about he was on like a talk show where there was like the host like that was kind of sitting by the side, and Henry Cavill and the other person that they were having on the show was like the host said something, you're into this thing, it's called Warhammer 40K, and the person that was on the show was like, what army are you running? He's like, oh, you play? I do this. And he's like, oh, I run Necrons. He's like, oh, we got. So it says to the host, sorry, and then they go, we'll talk later. But it was I've heard of Necrons, but yeah, it's funny how like just Henry Cavill's just a fucking godsend.
Necrons are cool as fuck because they run disintegration weapons and they just eat through armor. But they're also made out of metal so that they resist a lot of stuff. So they're really tough and they just swarm like zombies. And then they also have like other constructs that like they're larger things that are like these tank things. They're just, Necrons are cool as shit. But if that's the route that they're going, because all of the artifacts that I saw at the end of the game of Space Marine 2 definitely look like Necron artifacts. And... well, I won't give the exact ending scene away. So,
I'm looking them up right now because I'm curious as to what they look like. Oh god, they almost look like fucking like Terminator.
Right. Yes. And they glow green.
I just know, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Necron, like you kind of, like you think like Necromancer or anything with Necro in it. I feel like always has a hint of green somewhere.
All of the 40K factions were based off of Warhammer Fantasy factions, and there was the Skeleton Lords, and that's basically what the Necrons were in like the absolute early days of Warhammer. In the absolute early days of 40K. Their lore came later.
That looks cool. It's Satan Shard of the Void Dragon.
Yeah.
That looks fucking cool.
Those are the Catans that I was telling you about.
I gotta put this. I can't go into another rabbit hole of something that I'm like,
dude.
It's like Star Wars isn't enough. You need more.
Oh, dude. Like, yes.
Oh god.
I'm telling you, dude. You would appreciate, if there's anybody that I know that would legitimately appreciate the depth of lore of 40K, it's you.
That's what I love. That's what got me into Star Wars. Is that all I had was the movies, and then I go to the library. I'm like, there's books, and that was it. And now I have boxes of comics that are just Star Wars, not including the Marvel, the DC, or the X-Men comics, or all the James Bond comics and fucking Power Ranger comics that I have.
I'm gonna hey Google real quick. So I don't want to say it live. So hey Google, how many books are in the Black Library?
According to Wikipedia.org, Black Library's catalog now runs to well over 200 titles, with a Warhammer and a Warhammer 40,000 novel appearing every month.
So, she said, how many books?
Over 200.
Over 200 titles, with a Warhammer and a Warhammer 40K book being published every month. And they're not junk. They're good. They're really good.
You've never steered me wrong before.
I will say that, like, don't get started there. Don't get started there. I have a book I'll loan you if you want to read it. And
no.
It's a core manual, and it has.
I don't need to.
And
twist my arm.
I'll let you read it, and you can catch up to this moment. It'll give you. It's a quick read. You can probably read it in like 2 days.
Okay.
And it's about that. It's probably about 100 pages, and yeah, and it basically gives like a quick rundown of like.
See, I have this thing where I wouldn't say I have an addictive personality, but it's like, why do I know that, Cloud City is roughly 8,237 meters approximately from the surface of Bespin. I don't need to know not only of Luke Skywalker, but of his children and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Cade Skywalker, shout out to that fucking awesome character, one of my favorite comics. I go deep. I went deep enough into knowing like the race of General Grievous and like, his warrior like tribe things, and I was obsessed. And like now 200 that's.
So Star Wars is a thing. It's its own thing. And what you'll start to hear is like 40K isn't a story, it's a setting. You'll hear 40K isn't a game, it's a setting. 40K isn't like, it's not what most people would, when you can't wrap your mind around it. Like I didn't. I walked into this and I was like, oh, models, cool.
I'm gonna
it's
try.
Kind of fun. It's interesting. That's kind of cool. But when you start getting into it, you start realizing that like it goes in like 70 different directions. You're like, what the fuck? And like I've told you before, like you start reading up on it, you start reading some of these things, and you're like, oh, like wait, when did this come out? 1997? that's before this, this, and this. So they actually drew from this, like,
Yeah.
and it's so much of that.
I can't wait to do that now.
Like one of my all time favorite things is the ships. Their
I do love
spaceships.
Anything Star Wars, what my favorite parts of any movies were like the space battles. Like the battle above Scarif in Rogue One.
Then you need
Amazing.
to get Armada.
Go on.
So there's Warhammer 40K Armada, and that is literally you build an armada and you fight in space, and you have like torpedoes and cannons and laser cannons and stealth things, and you tell the shields, you control the shields from the front and the back and this and that, and and it's all.
I have 3 cents in my bank account right now.
Don't worry, I'll take care of it.
And I'm like,
Don't worry.
I'm just like, oh man, new hobby. I know.
Yeah, no, I'll loan you all that stuff.
Yeah.
The recommendation when it comes to 40K is like, look at all the factions first, like figure out all the factions, figure out which one either A, looks the coolest to you, which I don't always necessarily recommend,
I'm gonna do it.
or follow the one that
I
suits
usually
your
go-
personality the best.
That's usually, yeah. So I usually go for like something that suits my personality but also looks cool. So like that's why I always kind of gravitated towards Gray Jedi, because I always thought like I liked being on the light side, but like having knowledge of the dark side, I felt like that gave you an advantage when you fought Sith. But like, Sith or Jedi, can't form attachments. I like boobs too much. I need a girlfriend. So like Gray Jedi is like my go-to, and plus they usually have like cooler lightsabers, and like I love the gray side. That's always been like my vibe.
Here's the biggest mind fuck of it all. The biggest absolute complete mind fuck of it all. I don't know how they did this. I have never seen it done in any other piece of media in my life. With all the stuff that's been written down, with all the things that exist in the 40K universe, it doesn't matter, because what it means to you is what it means to you.
Qua?
So you know how I say like for the Emperor?
Yeah.
Okay. Because this setting is so huge, to some people, the Emperor is a god. To some people, he's just a person. To some people, he's a rotten corpse sitting on a throne. And that exists in the real world also. So there's a faction called the Sisters of Battle, and they're basically like sort of reminiscent of Catholic nuns with guns, and that's literally what they call them, nuns with guns.
That's hot.
So they believe in devoting themselves to the Emperor. They don't get married. They run a nunnery, but those nunneries are also like basically their military faction. And
I think I just picked my faction.
well, they're pretty awesome. But
Did I almost get a spit take?
so they've been known to pray and miracles happen.
Interesting. Okay.
And the only person who would be able to commit those miracles would be a god. But he claims to be just a man and an atheist. The Emperor claims to be an atheist. He was an intellectual that doesn't believe in religion, and burned an entire planet of one of his sons because he said, "I am just a man. Do not worship me." That's what I mean. That's what I mean by it depends on what it means to you.
I'm not gonna sleep tonight.
So I run one of the most loyalist of all chapters. My chapter's the Dark Angels. But they don't
Which is so you.
but they don't commit themselves to the Emperor. They commit themselves to their Primarch. The Primarch is the son. So there's 20 Primarchs.
God, I love it when you talk dirty.
The Emperor took pieces of his DNA
Mm-hmm.
and a touch of the warp and created 20 children. 2 of them no longer exist, and they've been wiped from the records. That's the 2nd and the 11th. We're not supposed to talk about that because the Grey Knights will show up and they'll kill us. So we won't talk about that. But there are 9 loyalist Primarchs and 9 traitor Primarchs. And my Primarch is the Lion. His name's Lion L. Johnson. And the Dark Angels are known to, like, if the Emperor says something.
I'm sorry, my brain was really hoping you were going to say Lionel Richie. But keep going.
So if the Emperor.
And just shaking a mane of a lion, shaking its mane of hair, but it's like, let your soul glow. And just a lion with a Jerry curl, a greasy as fuck Jerry curl. And I'm sorry, my brain.
I sent you off on a tangent.
Yeah.
So the Dark Angels, they're known as the First. They were one of the first created legions.
FUR for first for lions.
No,
Sorry, I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm
FIRS.
shutting up. I
And-
swear to God.
So them being, well, yes, him being Thousand Sons is not far off, but there's other ones.
Oh, Alan knows about this stuff too.
There's other ones that I think if he likes being gray might suit him better. The Grey Knights.
Yeah, you mentioned something about Grey Knights earlier, and I was like, my ears perked up a little bit.
They're Psychers, which means so in this game, like Psychers.
I'm familiar.
are
You told
like
me
the
what
Force
Psychers were.
users.
Yeah, you were when we were watching that video,
Yes.
and you were telling me about Psychers, and I was
Yes.
like, and you were like, I think you like them. They kind of have like the Force and stuff, and I was like, go on.
So the Grey Knights are Psychers, but they are also demon hunters, and that is literally their job, is to just hunt demons. And they're sort of a semi-rogue faction that they kind of operate outside of the laws of the Imperium. They do what they need to do because the warp permeates everything and can harm everything. They have a little bit of extra oomph so that they can go and, like, if they suspect a loyalist of, like, being infiltrated by the warp, they can go wipe them out. The only other faction that is like that is the Dark Angels. But the Dark Angels have a dark secret, and I'm not talking about that right now because we don't talk about the Fallen. The hitmen, the ones that, like, they won't go harm another loyalist unless they're absolutely told to, is the Space Wolves. But they're sort of like Vikings, space Vikings. They're really cool because they actually turn into wolves too. They turn into like werewolves, and then there's the Blood Angels, which are basically vampires, and they have this thing called like the Black Rage, where if they're like fighting long enough, they suffer the same thing that happened to their Primarch because DNA passes on memories, so that they remember what happened to Sanguinius when he died, and and they go ape shit, and
Wow.
everybody looks like one person because everybody looks like Chris, who's the betrayer brother. Yeah, dude, it's so fucking deep.
Oh my.
So deep. It's so good. I
We need-
literally just put on
we-
lore videos and just
Yeah,
like go about my day. and
We
it's like,
should just see. So what we have to do, I think, is we need to, because I do want to put out a review. I think that's something we should do this like for next week. We've done movies and everything. I think because this game just came out, was earlier this week.
yeah. Last Sunday.
Get you play it on your computer in there.
Yeah.
Get Streamlabs, download Streamlabs OBS to that computer if you haven't already, and then just click record.
Okay.
And then you don't even have to record because we can add commentary later on after the fact. Opening this game
So
with the Death Watch is so tight.
yeah. Nice. I love all of you right now.
Wait, Raven?
All of you
Raven?
from my heart. I love you, dude. I'm telling you. Like, you don't have to collect the models to be in the game. Like, to be into this. Like,
Yeah, because the only time I ever really did it was when I was I used to play with my friend Jeff in his basement. I helped him paint some figurines before, and then I think I did two games with him before on the tabletop.
the story.
downstairs.
So this is the truth. This is the reality. I don't like the game. I don't like the tabletop game. I love the models. Absolutely love the models.
God, maybe we should get my dad into it.
I can't wrap my head around the absolute, like, just, I want to say laundry list, but it's not even a laundry list. Like, the fucking multitude of rules that are in this game. So I'm actually developing my own game that is loosely based on Magic the Gathering, sort of the same resource of Magic the Gathering, to develop sort of a semi RTS version of it.
I know exactly who you need to talk to. We'll talk about that for sure. But yeah, I want to get you to, whenever you're playing it this week, just get footage of you playing it. You don't even have to record any audio or commentary for it. We can add that in post, or we could just do it live where like we have it playing in the background. But have it where you're playing it, and then we'll talk about it more, because that's definitely something I want to get a review dedicated just to that.
Alan, did you play the first Space Marine? I don't want to sit here and...
No, I got you. But
did you play the first Space Marine?
No.
No. I overlooked it. At the time, I wasn't... Okay, so you did play the first Space Marine. So have you gotten to the part... How far through the first part of the Death Watch did you get?
That's a bass to it. That was a bassy burp.
So, just to put it out there, I actually have a hand-painted model of Titus.
Nice.
I was a fan of Titus. Okay, so you just booted it up. All right, I'm not going to give any of that opening sequence away. I'm going to tell you one thing. I actually got choked up. Yeah.
That's the thing. I've never seen you get like... I don't think I've ever really seen you get
There-
emotional. There's one time I've seen you get like somewhat emotional before, ever, and that was when you were talking about we're at work, and I was talking about how I hadn't finished Red Dead Redemption 2 yet. Yeah. And I was like,
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that right now.
I know I gotta. Everybody's like, anytime somebody said, they're just like, you have, oh fuck, and I'm just like,
We're not talking about Red Dead Redemption right now.
I'm at a point now where I feel like I just have to, like, you know how like on YouTube sometimes they have like all the cutscenes in one thing, but I feel like it's not, you don't get the full.
Alan?
Yeah, I just gotta sit and play it.
If you kind of like the first one and it kind of like opened your head up to the 40K, this game is going to bring so many people into 40K. It's not even funny, because this one runs deep, and because it's a semi-live service game, it's going to keep going, and people are just going to keep getting into it. And I love the way that they're doing this. I absolutely love the way that they're doing this, because it's not going to be DLCs and all this extra shit that you're going to have to buy and pay for all this time. And, you know, you get the season pass and you're going to be good to go for the year. But I think that they're going to keep adding more stuff for the single player game, so that the single player doesn't just become like a okay, did that, threw that away, now we're just going to play multiplayer for the next 10 years. No, they're going to keep adding stuff to because they got so much. They got so much that they can add to it. There's so many different things that they can go down. And like I said, if they bring in the Necrons, dude, we're talking about basically just a whole nother world of, like, Insanity.
How many factions are there?
Okay. That's a question.
Is there an answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Is there a number?
So you have 18 of the Imperials. You have, like I said, you have 9 of the Loyalists, and then you have 9 of the traitorous Marines.
Okay, so the Imperium are the ones that have like the big bulky
The Imperials
armors.
are anybody human.
Anybody human? Okay.
Human. So the traitor Marines are the dark side.
Okay.
They're demons. They're all demon infested. So it would actually be easier to say this, and this is one of the big speculators right now, is so that there's 4 chaos gods.
Okay.
You have Tzeentch, he's the god of insanity and change. You have Nurgle, who is the god of rot, decay, and rebirth. He's so gross. I hate Nurgle. There was actually a Nurgle player who actually put literal human poop on their models. Then there's people get deep in this game. Then there's Slaanesh. Slaanesh is a god that was created from the hedonism of the elves.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
Go back to what you just say about
processing. All right. So the third one after Nurgle. What was the third one?
Slaanesh.
Slaanesh. Okay.
Slaanesh has an amazing name. His name is SLA apostrophe ANESH.
Okay.
Do you know where they created that name?
No.
Okay, so Slaanesh in the setting was created from the hedonism of a very specific elf faction, space elves. They were actually called the Eldari, and they couldn't die. So because they couldn't die, they became sort of like addicted to sensation. So it started out normal, and they would just have like crazy orgies and really crazy stuff like that. Then they started hurting themselves, then they started hurting other people, and they started indulging in like the really disgusting, bizarre, and it was actually one specific like over the top orgy that they did that created this god who came for all of their souls. So now they can die.
Now, when you say came for their souls,
No,
during this
just stop. Just wait. Just wait.
Okay,
Just
okay.
wait.
I'm
Just
sorry.
wait.
I'm
Just
listening.
back that. Just reel that back in.
Okay.
So
Like arrived.
yes,
Okay,
arrived for
okay.
their soul. Now they're the Drukhari, which is the dark elves,
Okay.
and their whole artistry is like bondage gear and whips and chains and all. Dude, it's amazing,
Hot.
but it's hilarious because there's a running joke that like you can't paint Drukhari without getting like stabbed because they're like little pointy elves.
Yeah.
So
That sounds adorable.
Slaanesh, SLA. What is that? Sex and Lovers Anonymous. Yes, it's actually based off of that.
That's actually funny. That's really tip of the cap to whoever
Yeah,
came
man.
up with that one.
Yeah. Then the fourth god is
Okay.
corn. So he's the one that we were talking about the other day when you showed me
I'm
that
in
video.
Congress. Oh my god, that video was so funny.
It's literally spelled Khorne, corn. And he is the god of war.
Okay.
So remember how I said it's all the warp. These are all the warp gods. They're all chaos gods. They're warp gods. And they're really insidious because the Imperium's constantly fighting at war. So that thin line of like going crazy and becoming a corn worshiper is always like right there. Same thing with Tzeentch. Tzeentch is always right there. And you're covered in these planets that are covered in dead bodies.
Tzeentch is the one of
Change.
and insanity.
Yes. And Nurgle. You're always surrounded by rot and decay and all this stuff. And if if you don't clean up the fucking battlefields, then like all of a sudden, there's these little guys that look like weird things running around with pots on their heads, and then the next thing you know, the pigs are talking and they're growing faces out of their sides. He does some really weird shit. I don't like Nurgle. I don't know how many times I got to say it. I don't like Nurgle. If I was living in that setting, I would literally just coat myself in fucking rubbing alcohol and bleach. But then, Nurgle fell in love with one of the healing gods of the.
I'm just looking up.
Are you looking up Grandfather Nurgle? Oh yeah.
Oh. What in the fuck?
Yeah.
It's just a giant booger with horns. It looks like if Jabba the Hutt ate Jabba and then dressed as a moose.
Yeah. Yes.
Why is that supposed to be a hot Nurgle?
Somebody did like the sexy Nurgle.
It's like, why is Rule 34 a thing?
Oh God! And it's a big thing in 40K.
Oh Christ!
So.
Oh my God. Okay, that's enough of that.
So the four Chaos Gods hate each other. Okay, they're constantly vying for power.
I'm sorry I did that. Me.
They're constantly vying for power amongst each other. So, Khorne took over Angron, who's one of the Primarchs. He's one of the kids. He's one of the traitors, and he's the legion that he has for Khorne is
34 strikes again. Hail the machine god.
Yes, man. Praise the Omnissiah. Praise be to Space King. So Khorne has what the fuck are they called? It's terrible. My brain's a little rotted right now, so I'm trying to think. They're not the Flesh Terrors. The Flesh Terrors are loyalists. They're loyalist second successor Blood Angels. Fuck. All right, so Tzeentch is the Thousand Sons. Nurgle is the Death Watch or Death Guard. There's two factions. There's a loyalist faction and there's an evil one. And they're the Death something or other too. I think there's a Death Guard. Slaanesh, he is Lord of the Drukhari, so he doesn't really have anything to do with the humans. Khorne is, so that's 4. Then there's Chaos Undivided, which is their own thing, which this really douchey brother named Horus got everybody to turn against. Yeah, that's the Horus Heresy. So there's 5 Chaos. Now, technically, the Emperor sort of is held as he's like the good god. He's the human god. So, and then you have... I think there's like 22 factions. Huh? There's over 35 factions. Oh, Steph looked it up. There's over 30. I like how
it was just
40K
like
40K itself. Because I know that there's 9 loyalists, there's 9 chaos. Then you have, and those are just the humans. Then you have the Xenos, which are the Necrons, the Tyranids,
I just love that I was like,
the Tau.
How many factions are there? And you're like, that's a question. I'm like, is there an answer? Is there a number? And you're like, so you got this, you got this, you got this. They do this, and this does that, and this, and then Steph's just like, there's 35.
There are over 35 different playable races, sub-factions, and chapters you can pick from and form your army.
Yes. So there's over 35 different. So
that's a lot.
Races and sub-factions.
That's
yes.
a lot. It's
yes.
It's not like Star Wars.
I'm the light slide, the dark slide, and the gray slide, and they're kind of cool.
Yeah, it's not even. It's just like, it's just like you're either with the rebels or with the Empire, and then it's just like, and then Warhammer is just like, we have all these gods and chaos, and we don't travel through space, we travel through hell.
Yeah.
And it's just like fucking balls to the wall. Like, oh my god,
So the actual
I'm so invested in this now.
so there's the Astra Militarum, which are basically the human factions of the Imperium. So they're basically like the Grunt Marines. They're not Marines. They're like the Grunt Army. Some are like the Krieg. They're my personal favorite, Astra Militarum. They wear gas masks. They have these fucking hoses, and they talk like, and they're hilarious. And they because they come from a
Very,
planet.
very industrial goth.
Yes, actually, yes, they're very industrial goth. So they had a civil war where they killed off. They didn't go chaos, but they didn't want to be under the Emperor's rule anymore. And then the Loyalists like nuked the entire planet. And then they figured out, well, we just killed off half of our population. We have to figure out a way. So they basically started like cloning themselves, and they like boiled down their DNA to just like a very specific, like this person just like devotes themselves to the Empire. So that's what they do, and they are literally human suicide machines. They are amazing, but they're not just fodder. They're not. That's the thing that's amazing about them, is they're not just fodder. They're actually very smart and very tactical, but ruthless and absolutely no fear of death. And they will just they will go to get the job done. But if that means that we're not going back, okay.
Yeah.
Then you have the Cadians. And every single Cadian is based off of John Rambo.
I feel like John Rambo is
I'm sorry. I'm wrong. Not the Cadians. That's wrong. The Catacans. The Catacans were on a jungle planet. That's what I'm saying.
But the Cadians are another faction.
The Cadians are another
Okay.
human Astra Militarum faction.
Oh my god.
So you have the Krieg.
I feel like Rambo is so light compared to anything else in Warhammer.
You have the Krieg. You have the Catacans. You have the Cadians, and then you have
We have 12 viewers right now. You going off on about 40K is like the most viewers we've had.
yeah, right. The solar.
People chiming in from other rooms. Are you guys talking about Warhammer?
The solar.
Hold on, I got my figurines.
They just put them in plastic too. They're actually the army from the Earth. So Earth is not called Earth in 40K. It's called Terra, Holy Terra.
Fair enough. Latin.
Because it was Earth at one point, but because the Empire grew and it became Terra.
These guys were gonna eat you. They ain't never tasted Terran before. R.I.P. Yondu.
Then there's the Mechanicus. There's the Mechanicus, who are actually from Mars, and I told you about them. They're the technology worshippers. They're their own faction. There's the Tau, who are basically like the Covenant from Halo, but like douchier, way douchier. Think, okay, Halo 3, where you actually meet those guys that float around on the pods, and they're like the leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a whole fucking like class of them, and they suck.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, and they basically just use everybody else as fodder.
Earth
They're
is
also
called
called
Pee and Poop
Oh.
Part 2.
a lot of times in the setting, people refer to them as space commies, and that's because essentially you either they call it the greater good. It's all for the greater good. It's all for the greater good, except if you don't really agree with this, because then they'll sterilize you. It's amazing, dude. I'm telling you, this whole setting it's so deep. And
I'm probably not gonna be able to sleep tonight. So we are at 2 hours and 12
we should
minutes.
probably wrap.
Yeah. So, again, this has kind of been the trope of how we do it. We do an hour of review for the
Movie
film,
review.
and then we just bullshit and kind of piggyback off of that onto similar things. We did want to talk about Space Marine 2 because that just came out. It's something that you've been waiting for a while now. We are very likely probably going to be doing a review on that next week, and more in-depth review, not just on the lore, but on the game itself. next week. So tune in for that next Friday in review, Space Marines 2. We'll be back again for This Week in General on Monday, and then the midweek marquee on Wednesday.
Yep.
So thanks again, everybody. If you want to
Thanks for
support
tuning
us, again, links in the description. We got merch. We got a tip thing. So if you want to support us directly, you can do it that way so we can buy more Warhammer figurines and all that fun stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So
And thank you very much, Alan, for tipping us. You didn't have to do that, my man. I appreciate it.
oh shit, I just
Yep, that snuck in there.
God damn, I didn't even realize. Thank you, man. Appreciate
That's-
for the 10 teraflops.
That's gonna go to Steve's first army.
Yeah.
we're gonna build him. We're gonna build him an army of Grey Knights.
Appreciate
All
that
right,
one.
folks.
Yeah,
Love all of you.
We got to have it where the notifications go into the headphones.
It's
so we
probably
can- yeah.
not a bad idea.